July 2024 meeting of the Pima County Transportation Advisory Committee. First thing, Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you, everyone. Just to let everybody know, Chair Robinson is out of town. She may be able to call in if her meeting that she's attending finishes in time. So with that being said, Gilbert, let's do a roll call.
Nori Nelson. Sean Sansel.
Present.
Kelly Lee. Charlene Robinson. Tom Beresny.
Present.
Brian Santa Cruz.
Here.
Dan Berber.
Here.
John Monroe.
Here.
Frank Fry.
Here.
Bill Schlesinger. Right now, we do not have a quorum.
Okay, thank you, Gilbert. So since we do not have a quorum, we cannot take any actions on anything. We still can go through the briefings on the road repair and RTA next. So the action item number 3, approval of the meeting minutes or summary from June 25th will be deferred to our September meeting. So item 4, road repair update.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. We are proud to present this month's update of our pavement preservation and road repair program. So getting started, just briefly talking about substantially complete projects. So obviously being first month of the fiscal year, nothing substantially complete of fiscal 25, but all of our fiscal 24 roadways are complete. So everything that was selected as part of that program has been completed. You can see there kind of the stats of what we were able to accomplish with last year's program, with the 34.18 miles of road repaired, 120 miles of road preserved, 80 new curb ramps, and then we did come in just under the budget for the year. And you can see their guiding principles met. Yes, we did continue to meet our guiding principles. We currently have, it says 1% of the network in very poor. It's actually just less than 1%, which is very exciting. And then 69% of our roads are in that very good category, so we're talking PCI of 70 and above. And that is just shy of 70% actually. And so all of those projects have been completed. All those roads are there, and so that final dollar amount, just to make sure we reference that. I know it's very specific up there, but that is subject to slight fluctuations as the last project closeouts go on and the last dollars are budgeted out, or not budgeted out, are paid out to the contractors. So that might fluctuate a little bit, but that's generally where that dollar is going to end up being. So pretty good overall progress for fiscal 24. So what do we have ongoing currently? So we have the Arivaca repair project is still going on. I don't think I'm the first one to tell everyone that it's been raining a lot recently. And so rain has slowed down that project a little bit, but they're still working well through the areas, as well as some areas on Arivaca-Sosebee Road that are coming up. So that's really where they're going to finish out, is on Arivaca-Sosebee Road. So there's a chance that some of that work on Arivaca-Sosebee might stretch into August, as rain continues to happen and progress is kind of slowed down a little bit more than what it may have been in early June. The Pima Mine Road, Ocotillo Ranch Road project, you can see that listed on ongoing projects. The notice to proceed for that is next Monday, so no actual boots in the ground, but we have had the preliminary pre-planning work going on, so there's been some survey work and some other stuff going on. The actual construction will begin next Monday on that project, barring any weather delays or anything like that. Some other projects to talk about for fiscal '25. This is the Sonoran Ranch Camino Verde Estates curb ramp project. This has been awarded to ISX Construction for $949,103. There's 96 curb ramps on this job. Completion date of February 28th of 2025. The contractor right now is preliminary scheduling construction to begin mid-August. So we're about a month out from construction getting underway on this project. But once it gets going, it should move fairly quickly in those two subdivisions on the southwest side of the metro area. Another project, the Riverside Crossing ADA and paving project. So this is the combined curb ramp and paving project. Also awarded to ISX Construction. This was awarded for $553,343. There's 24 curb ramps on this project and just under a mile of paving in that subdivision. With the completion date on that expected by the 20th of December. We're really looking at this project following after that last one we just talked about. That's how the contractor is talking about sequencing. So we're expecting that construction to really get going in late October, early November. So still a little ways out on this one, but it is awarded at this point, and so the contractor may, as schedules are moving, might move this project around since it is a fairly small project. The Ajo surface treatment project has been awarded to Sunland Asphalt for $1,046,000. You can see there's 8.37 miles of local road surface treatment and 4.98 miles of arterial surface treatment on this job. This does include fog seals, cape seals, micro seals, as well as crack seal in preparation for all those surface treatments. So a good amount of work on this project, and they are anticipating getting going with that here probably in about a month, month and a half as we get into the latter part of August. Completion date on this is the 31st of January of 2025. Another project that was just awarded, the Green Valley Surface Treatment Project. This was awarded to Southern Arizona Paving for $667,000. There's 5.88 miles of local road, 5.27 mile of arterial collector road, and all of this is fog seal work on this project, so it's all fog seal preceded by crack seal. And we really anticipate that to be going toward the latter part of August, early part of September as well. Completion date on that has to be completed prior to the 20th of December. So a couple more projects to talk about briefly. This one is in our package preparation stage. We're getting ready to advertise it maybe even as early as this week. This is the Camino del Oeste and Sunset Boulevard Mill and Pave project out there on the southwest side of the metro. You can see kind of in the top of the image, that's Ajo Highway. So both of these are south of Ajo Highway. Engineers' estimate is $1 million to $1.2 million for this project. And there are 2.7 miles of arterial collector road on it. With a completion date, it has to be completed prior to the end of January. And the last one to talk about briefly, Moore Road Mill and Pave project. So this is also in our preparation stage, getting ready to go out for advertisement as well, potentially as early as the end of this week. Engineers' estimate is $650,000 to $900,000 for it. There's 1.98 miles of arterial collector road with a completion date of the 20th of December. So that was a lot of projects. So just looking at kind of a high-level picture of where we're at with the completion status of the program, you can see quite a large amount, almost a quarter of the dollars now moving out of that preparation stage, so either in construction or awarded or advertised. We do anticipate more of those going as we continue through the year. And that's kind of really where we're at with that right now. So just a reminder, you can see all the roads that have been selected for this fiscal year as well as past fiscal years, as well as their status at the Road Repair Preservation Project map with the link there below. And that you can also see what package that road's a part of, as well as the generic time frame for when it's going to be done. So the dates on there when you click on a road don't necessarily mean that it's going to start that very day, but it means it's going to happen sometime in that range. So that's an item of clarification on that. And I don't know if there's Gilbert, is there another slide after that? Okay. Perfect. So we had been asked to kind of do a little bit more of a deep dive into the selection methodology with the arterial collector roads. And so we're halfway through our 10-year program, and so here's a little bit of a kind of a deep dive on how these have been getting selected, as well as kind of the methodology going forward. And so just kind of starting off, you might remember this slide from last month. So kind of the overall theme on this slide, if you will, is that dollars stretch a lot further with preservation treatment. So you can see at the top of that curve is where you're going to get those crack and fog seals, and then your mill and paves are all the way down the side of that curve as you get lower on the PCI scale. And so the cheapest treatment, obviously, then is the treatments on the top, the ones that are less intensive, less heavy of a treatment. And you can apply those most effectively when the roads are in the better condition. So your fog seals are more appropriate when the road's in good condition. And then as you get more and more distresses on a road, you need a little bit heavier of a treatment. And so the key here, kind of in concept, right, is that when you're selecting a road, you want to get the right treatment at the right time. You want to make sure that you're getting the best return on your investment for that road. So we're not going to go and fog seal a road that you can't fog seal, and et cetera, right? So as you go, when you do a treatment, it then moves the road up the curve again. So it restores the life expectancy out of that. So what's another way of looking at that? So that's this chart here, and this is more specifically for arterial collectors. So the last chart was kind of overall for any road. This is for arterial collectors specifically, a little bit of a deep dive here. The better condition is on the right side, the worst condition is on the left. And what this is really showing are those numbers in the black there. That is the average arterial collector square yard cost for whatever treatment you're doing. And you can see as the roads get better, your cost of your treatment is getting cheaper. That's kind of what we were talking about that last graph as well. In the red there, the smaller numbers in red above that is what's called the cost of deferral. So it's that extra cost accrued when you miss the opportunity to do a treatment when it's supposed to be done. So in general here, you can see that far right column, the 91 to 100 PCI. We're saying here in this activity, it's a $2 a square yard. If you miss the opportunity to get that treatment done and you slide into that 81 to 90, now you're talking $4 a square yard. So your cost of deferral there is $2. And so that cost of deferral is the added cost to the taxpayer when a road needs more robust treatment or repair than it might have had to have if it was tackled in the previous condition category. So that's kind of the concept behind it. And this is a major factor when determining the return on investment for a road. The better condition of the road, the cheaper the treatments that's necessary to keep the road in better condition. Now, something I will note here on this is that these are broadly average costs for each of these categories. It's not tied to a specific treatment because treatments vary depending on the condition of the road and what distresses are there. But in general, though, with the treatments available to us, i.e. like fog seals or slurry micro seals, those are what you're going to find in that very good category, that green. Those are typically what you're going to see in that category. As you continue down, your micro and cape seals, thin overlays, that sort of stuff, are going to get into that good category. Then once we keep going into those oranges and the reds, the poor and very poor, that's where you're really talking about like milling and paving or other treatments like that. And so as you're going, a good program is going to have a robust selection across the board, trying to make sure that we're catching things before they fall into the next category. That's really what the return on investment is talking about. And so the percent of the PCI in each given category here helps determine what the priorities are in any given year. So we have to be responsive to what we're seeing in the overall network. Return on the roads at the bottom of a category condition are going to have a higher return on investment than others within the same category, since the cost of deferral is high. What I mean by that is those roads that are in the left side of each of those columns are getting ready to fall into the next one down. So that's where that cost of deferral, that red number, is realized. And so those roads in those areas are going to have the highest return on investment for the county, because we're trying to save those roads from falling into the next category down. So that's kind of a very high level look at what that looks like. Some other factors that are included in this return on investment category, you can see that cost of deferral, which is what we just talked about, but there's some other categories or other items that are utilized, to calculate and rank roadways for that return on investment. And that's including the federal functional classification that ADOT publishes, the annual average daily traffic volume for a road, the pavement distress types on that road, as well as the PCI. So I know we talk a lot about PCI, but there's a lot of other factors that go into the return on investment calculation for the arterial collector roads. More specifically, there's other smaller factors after these that are used for like tiebreaker situations, where if you have a road that has the same return on investment at the end of the day, you might use a tiebreaker, such as the overall maintenance section cost. So obviously cost is a factor that goes into it down the line. Say you have a section of road that's 4 miles long versus one that's a mile long, that might be your tiebreaker, figuring out how you can fit that in your budget for the year. But again, that's way far down the line. That's used only as a tiebreaker and not as a primary determining factor. And that's really a very high level look at what the return on investment, how arterial collector roads are selected for the program. With that, I will open to any questions. I know there's a lot of information.
Okay, anybody have any questions? Okay, I have a couple.
I figured you would, Tom.
Okay, so go back to the original slide that had that cost on there.
You're talking this one or the next one?
In the road repair and preservation.
Okay. You're talking the very, very beginning.
Yeah, that one.
That
there.
one.
Okay, so does that projected final expenditure, does that include that money that was left over that we applied to the Arivaca Road and those roads?
Yes, that does.
And then if there is a balance left from what we had budgeted to the final cost that we had incurred, where is that excess, even if it's a couple $1,000s, where does that go?
Catherine, you want to? You might be better equipped to answer that question than I am.
Right. So it's a balancing act every year, because when we submit our budgets for the budget year we're living in now, we didn't know exactly what this value was. So we did not include the $185,000 extra in this. So we don't have spending capacity as of now for it. I know there's some final expenses, so this is a projected final balance. But essentially, it will stay with the program. It's just not in that budget. It's kind of like a rolling tally of it. So you'll see how we do. When we do our annual updates, you'll see it in that kind of rolling expense. So some years we've come in way above what we budgeted, and we just have to wait till we have savings in other operational areas to cover that overage. And this year we actually came under. So that money rolls and is in our fund balance for the department since it was department funding, but it can be reinserted as we have capacity to spend it on the program.
If it goes into the overall Department of Transportation budget, basically, if there is a balance left.
Well, because this was department money. This was not the PAYGO funding for last year. It was her.
This is department money?
Yeah, all the dollars from this year were.
So last year, the PAYGO went solely to debt service payments for earlier acceleration of the program.
Right, and so for the rest of the program, do we have any pay-go dollars left?
So for the next
Couple of years, no.
2 to 3 years, the PAYGO that comes, which is $25 million a year, is still paying off the certificates of participation that allowed us to accelerate with $50 million of spending those first 3 years.
Okay.
And actually, the department is covering the increase in debt service, so interest rates really increased since we decided to accelerate the program. So there's over about $1 million and a half that we're covering with department budget of interest for accelerating the program that is not covered by PAYGO.
Okay. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Jason. Any other questions? John?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jason, can you go to that stair-step slide that was almost at the end?
Yeah.
So we're saying we're about halfway through our 10-year program, right, or something like that?
Yeah.
Can we produce this from where we were 5 years ago? Because I think it tells a good story of just how much it's all shifted to a much improved system network, you know? I think that's just worth producing at some point, especially if the board gets a little too chintzy with giving you dollars. We can talk about what's been accomplished here, you know? That's just a suggestion more than a
Yeah,
question.
we can definitely look into that.
Appreciate that.
And
At
see if
least
we have that
put
data around.
The number of miles of road that were 91 to 100, and so you'd have 2 bars, or you'd have 2 columns in each.
Or just contrasting, them,
Yeah.
you know, just produce 2 of them and you can tell the difference. Thank you.
Ed?
Mr. Chair, this gets back to a question I had 8 or 9 months ago, and it's a clarification related to Tom's second question. And that was, I was asking, well, at the end of the year, like, you have about 185,000. If you had a project for 150,000 on the boards ready to go, you could obligate that now and still do it, if I understand what you just presented. Is that correct?
So it really depends on the timing. Since I'm not sure how fast dollars roll over from year to year, but typically when we're talking about within the given fiscal year, we have to make sure we have enough time to advertise a project and then get it constructed prior to the end of that fiscal year. And that was one of the things that over the last several months we were mentioning, is that we were seeing those savings start to come in, but not all of the savings we were going to be able to realize in time to get a project put together and have it applied for that fiscal year still. So
I guess what I'm saying, if you had in reserve 150,000 small project and a 250,000 small project, how much time does it take you to bid out a small project, get the responses and award it? So that you could still obligate money like this and
Yeah.
still have some left over. You take 150, it still leaves you 35,000 for pluses and minuses.
Well, and
This is a little bit of a detailed question, but
yeah,
it kind of like looks to the future in terms of using as much money as you possibly can.
if I can step in, I think that's a great question, Ed. So this past year, fiscal year '24, we did that kind of evaluation of how much money we would have left in more of the springtime frame. March, April is when we were looking at it, and we packaged together the Aravaca. That looked like it was about the size of the savings we had. Then, of course, we close out more projects, we find out that there's more money. This year, what we're looking at doing instead is probably December-ish, since we've bid so many projects early on and we're still getting quite favorable bids. We want to do that evaluation then, because then we have 6 months to figure out what we can squeeze in. We're never going to hit it on the nose, obviously. We're trying to make it as little as possible to spend it there, because just from a budgeting perspective, it's best to spend it in the fiscal year that you originally budgeted it. Otherwise, you're doing adjustments with your other line items.
Yeah.
But it usually takes, we give the jock contractors 2 weeks to look at the plans. I mean, we package it, that takes 3 weeks
Yeah.
minimum, because we get out there and we look at utilities and take measurements, all of those things. We have about 2 weeks if it's this size that would be a job order contract. They get the bids back. It takes another week or two to make sure that all their insurance and whatnot is in place. And then it's really working with the contractor in terms of when they can kick off the project and start it. So it is a fairly quick turnaround
So
for a job contract.
Couple of months, basically, plus or minus. Is that
Yeah.
about right, Jason?
Yeah.
Okay.
From inception of the project to getting a contractor,
Funds.
on probably about 2 months minimum.
So the funds that you receive for, not the operational, but the, if you will, the working capital or the capital projects, I noticed a handful are obligated late in the fiscal year, but they're going all the way into the next January or December or what have you, beyond the fiscal year. So if you awarded a $250,000 project, assuming you had that much money plus a little leeway, you could do that if you started in early June. Is that correct?
I mean, we could obligate it, but the expenses will tie to the fiscal year when that work was performed. So just because we obligate it in June, which is the end of our fiscal year, that 150,000, if the work can't start until late July, it'll hit the next fiscal year's actual budget for expenditures.
Okay, well, but a handful of these, again, you've obligated, they're $500,000 and more, that are falling into the next fiscal year. So how does that work? Are you using the money for the $500,000 from this year?
So what we did this year is we began advertising projects for fiscal year '25, which started on July 1st. We began advertising those in June so that we were ready
Okay,
to start
so
work
I get it.
immediately.
So all
Yeah,
these that are going into January and December
those
are
are this year's program.
projected projects for this coming year that you're going ahead of time on.
Correct,
So-
correct.
I get it, all right.
So basically, the money has to be obligated by the end of the fiscal year.
Well, we
Yeah.
want the work delivered in the fiscal year
Yeah.
because those expenses.
That would be the optimum, yeah.
So that's why we're going to probably do a couple cycles of seeing if we have saved money and apply it to projects. One that will look mid-year around December, and then our usual look in the spring. And hopefully we'll get closer to being right on the money, pun intended, for this fiscal year.
Yeah, I mean, that's a small amount, the 150,000 is a small amount, but it's more a tutorial for us in terms of what's feasible and what you do related to that, so thank
Yeah.
you.
All right, anybody else? I do have one more question, Jason, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So on your last slide that you had for the return on investment factors, explain the ADOT federal functional classification for everybody.
Yeah, so starting off with, every road has a classification to it, whether that's a local road or arterial or a collector, or they get more nuanced from there depending on the type of collector, the type of arterial, et cetera. ADOT's the agency that determine, I don't know if determine's the right word, but they hold the list for statewide what each road is going to be classification-wise. And that, most of their looking at what each of those roads are, we can see through a map they have, a list they have. We have the ability to then go, if we disagree with the classification, to go through the process and talk to them on that. Really, all that's doing is basically telling you what they expect that road to work like. Do they expect that to be a major road where you're looking at, 30,000 ADT on it, where you have shopping centers, et cetera, et cetera? Is it which would be an arterial type road? Is it a collector? Is it getting the neighborhood streets coming out to it, getting, a smaller amount of traffic on it? And then the ADOT map actually doesn't even classify local roads. They just assume that whatever's left over is local. But typically those are going to be your neighborhood streets and stuff like that. And so for our return on investment factors, we deal with arterial collectors in one bucket. That's kind of what we're talking about here. And then locals, we're dealing with worst first. So locals, we don't factor in these return on investment factors for that. We have that separate criteria selection for how we do those. But otherwise, any other classification, they're all here in this arterial collector selection. And so that's where that ADOT classification is used
Okay.
to kind of differentiate between the collectors and the arterials. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and so and just to follow up, and thanks,
Yeah.
Jason, are all arterials and collectors in Pima County have an ADOT classification to them?
Yeah, and it's not just Pima County. They do it statewide
Okay.
for everybody.
Okay, anybody else? Thank you, Jason.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, next item, RTA next update, Ms. Skinner.
Thank you, Vice Chair and Committee. It is, again, the monthly update on RTA Next. And I will say this time it is going to be extremely brief because there have been no meetings since the last meeting of the Transportation Advisory Committee where there's anything publicly discussed that I could share with you. There is a meeting scheduled this Thursday, the 25th of July at noon at Pima Association of Governments. It's both the regional council meeting and the RTA board meeting. So that is the body made up of Supervisor Scott from the county and then the mayors from all of the member jurisdictions. And on their agenda for RTA, it includes the RTA Next item as well as a cost to complete item for the existing RTA 1 and some other standing agenda items. But until that meeting, it's a little unclear what will happen. So I encourage you, if you're interested, feel free to tune in. I have heard, though it is not usually been officially posted, at least when I left for here, that they will flip. Usually regional council meets first at noon and then RTA board meets after that. I believe they're going to flip the order of the meetings, but I don't know that for sure. So that should be officially posted sometime soon. So I will say, Mr. Bernal's here. I don't believe TMC met, so I'm not sure there's much to add. But if you all have any questions, please feel free to ask them.
Anybody have any questions? I don't. Thank you, Ms. Skinner.
Thank you.
Pretty easy. Okay, next item, call to the audience. Do we have anybody that's called in, Gilbert? Okay, so we do have one, Jean Ann Gates, my friend from Green Valley.
Bresney. First of all, I just wanted to say thank you to Tom Bresney, to Joseph Godoy, and the two other people that came down to Green Valley not too long ago and spoke to our subdivision, which is Portillo Hills 2. We really appreciate it. We had a fairly good turnout. We were a little bit disappointed when we saw in the budget that we weren't going to get done. We were told that to redo the whole road in our subdivision, tear up and redo, was going to be about $1 million. And then they said to just reseal them would be about $250,000. And we thought, oh, maybe we'll get it this year. We didn't get it, which is a little disappointing considering the whole thing from the very beginning never had a top coat put on it, and it was like 30 years ago. But just to let you know, across the street is the gentleman who's given me all the information about when it was done. We never got the final coat, so on and so forth. He's 90-something years old. He is now dealing with a sciatic issue. He's going to take his garbage from his garage onto the road and to the circle to have it picked up. That our road from Amelia back to our house, I don't know how it's ranked, but it should be different ranked there compared to the rest of it all the way to Esperanza Estates, because ours is worse from Amelia back to our house. He can't take it out there. So I'm making him leave it on the edge of the driveway, and I'm taking his garbage out for him because he's going to fall. The road is that bad. I just wish you guys at some point reconsider and try $250 to reseal, we'd be thrilled with right now. But anyway, I haven't been able to come up for the last few meetings, but I remember last year they said there was $1 million left over. We were going, yay! No. And now when we got down to the $250,000 to just reseal them, we'd be thrilled just to get a year done. And I would like a couple of the people in our subdivision who've been there for over 30 years just to see it sealed. you know, to be able to walk on the road safely, because it's not safe. And I think Tom and Joseph and the other two, I don't remember their names, they did get to drive on our road, they walked on it. And like I said, I don't know, the beginning of the subdivision is ranked differently, should be ranked differently than when it comes from Amelia back to our house, because it never got the top coat, and it is really bad. But anyway, I'm just trying to stay informed and see what you all are doing, and I haven't had time, so this is my first chance I've had to come up here. But thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Jean Ann. I think Jason's taken a lot of notes, so I would expect an answer back from the Department of Transportation. Okay, so future items for discussion? Anyone?
Chair Tom,
Yes.
I was wondering, my good associate here, John, brought up last month a briefing on I-11. We know what the board did, and I was just curious as to what the time frame is for that briefing. But also a comment. I'm hopeful that that briefing might include some of the high-level comments on groups like Center for Biodiversity, Tucson Mountains Association, Friends of Ironwood Forest, that have kind of band together. I mean, I know they went to court on one issue related to EIS. So if we could get, as a part of that briefing, a little bit, maybe high level, what are some of the comments, concern related to this particular new freeway? Just additive to Tom's request, John's request for the briefing. If we can get some of that feedback, it'd be helpful.
Sure. And Paul's not here today, so I know that there's been some email back and forths there. So I'll add this. He'll be back for the next meeting because I don't think we're skipping August, so it'll be September. And we've talked about bringing in some other groups to give the presentation.
So that's not going to be ADOT given that, it's going to be Pima County Department of Transportation that'll brief the I-11.
We're going to reach out to ADOT as well as to Pima Association of Governments on some of
Okay.
the statistics that were requested.
So while we're at it, on kind of an I-11 tune, let's throw in whatever's being done with the Tier 2 study or proposed Tier 2 study for the Sonoran corridor. If you're not familiar with that, that's going to be a high-speed road from about I-10 and Rita Road to somewhere in the Saurita area connecting I-10 to I-19 and bypassing the major interchange in the south part of Tucson.
Mr. Chairman, the exchange that Ed and I had with Paul, I think the last thing I suggested was perhaps you can kind of wrap that all up in an update from PAG on the long-range plan update, because they're having to deal with all these major routes. So
Okay.
I think that was the suggestion that was made, and I think Paul was going to take it up with Catherine. So that would certainly be my recommendation. We get that update, and then we'll know how all these major routes play with each other, interact with each other.
Okay, and I have a new one that I don't think we've mentioned yet. So the Board of Supervisors and the county administration are looking at an excessive heat ordinance and where the county employees are going to be subject to some kind of rules and guidelines. And the talk is that it may go down to contractors with the county also. So I don't know if Catherine, you folks have taken in a deep dive into how it's going to affect contracting for road repair, the road repair program, or just maintenance at all. So if you haven't been looking at it, it might be something worthwhile to look at and how it's going to affect not only our contracts for the road repair and preservation program, but just overall maintenance. If it's going to be a stumbling block or whatever you want to call it, if we're going to have problems meeting our commitments to the residents because somebody can't work outside and at 10 o'clock in the morning or something like that. So you understand what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying. We
See
have,
what the impact on the budget is going to be. I think is a way to look at that, because there is going to be an impact, I think.
We'll have to take a look and figure out when we can schedule it at a meeting, because it's premature for me to,
Yeah,
have
yeah, they
answers
haven't,
there,
they haven't
so-
nailed down this ordinance yet.
Right.
So they're still discussing it.
so we'll keep that on the table as a future item
Right.
when it becomes
Okay.
ready.
Anybody else? Okay, so next meeting is in September. If you have any agenda items, get it to PTAC admin by the September 6th. And motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second it.
All right, we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.